working in a startup is very different, I think, than people that don't work at startups think it is. I think, the grass is always greener, I guess. But working in a startup is hard. It's really hard. And it takes a certain type of personality to really embrace that culture and embrace that level of responsibility, because I think you can work at a big company where you're just doing sort of one task in sort of an assembly line of many tasks, and then you come to a startup environment and all of a sudden you're doing 10 things, instead of one thing, or 100 things, I don't know. And so identifying people is difficult, and some companies, I think, specifically look for people that have worked at startups before. So it's like, oh, the drill. But even within the startup world, of course, every single startup is totally unique and different. And so I don't necessarily think that's a good indicator. To me, it's really just about trying to get to know someone during the application process and the interview process. And I care a lot less about what you've done, and I care a lot more about what I believe you are capable of doing, But that's hard to read, like, in a couple of interviews and an email, Simon, I don't know if you have any other thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think you touched on it, but there's just like a misnomer. Like, no one wants to sit there and beat their chest and be like, what I do is really hard. Because like that just sounds ridiculous and whiny. And by the same token, a lot of startup, entrepreneurs and early employees are very good at marketing because they have to think about marketing everything they do. So the world knows about all the cool parts of their job and all the fun things that they do because we're all engaged in social media and promoting our own apps or whatever it is we're doing. But I think Paul touched on, there's a lot of responsibilities that fall onto a very few amount of people, especially, in the first few years when you're starting. And I don't really see an end to that anytime soon, even though we're still, we're growing and we're of significant size. And so really it's just about taking on people who are, even if they've never had the full weight of many multiple responsibilities and sole responsibilities of tasks and roles, someone who's excited about that. Someone who looks at all of that and instead of start stressing out about it or wanting to run into a hole or retreat behind their desk, someone who says, this is great, give me more. And even if they're willing to take on more than they can handle, it's a sign of like that willingness and that potential. And so even if they fail at some of the aspects and you have to dial it back, it's the right type of attitude. And I think those are the types of people in generally that we look for when we're hiring, can do, will try, there's never enough. And you have varying success because it's impossible to know the future without the time machine. And we only use it for product decisions, not for hiring.
Not for hiring.
Yeah, unfortunately, it was one of those we don't do evil things. So